am Pastor Peggy from Slave Lake, Alberta.
And I'm Pastor Diane from Norfolk, New York. Welcome to Find Out Friday.
Woohoo! Find out. I love finding out things.
I know, it's so much fun, and I think this new direction where we're trying to find out things that will help us in the now, in this time of crisis, and as we go forward from here.
Yeah, I really like that, because there are things that we do need to know now, and there are components that we bring forward with us, into the future, and that's what I love about learning. Because once you have this knowledge, you can move forward with it, and that's why I am so excited about today.
Yes. Let's just go to the interview.
Started doing a 5K, and then went to a half, and then to a full.
Wow. So you just get up one morning and said, I think I'm going to run, just like Forrest Gump did.
Not quite as long as him from the get-go. It did start off, that 1 minute run, 1 minute walk, that didn't quite go from 0 to marathon.
Right. Well, congratulations. That's a big accomplishment.
Scientific thought it is something that actually has to be trained in, right? Like, there's a reason for scientists, we have pretty extensive amounts of training. Like, it's why we do, 1 degree, and then we do, most of us that go on to science, we have a few degrees behind our name. But it's because it is something that's trained. It's not something that people necessarily just, no, I got this down.
Mm-hmm.
No, and we don't always realize this because we're so used to, it becomes very obvious for us that we're always thinking in that manner. But you talk to other people and they don't have that same concept of how we go about it.
Yep. They think they do.
They think they do, but they really don't. I find science is one of these things a lot of people really don't grasp. And I think that kind of shows our scientific literacy in general population is very low. And unfortunately, we're starting to see more of a shift in people distrusting scientists too. Which is even worse because they're the ones that actually can understand this and synthesize this information and kind of, we do have some people that are really good at communicating science. And it's why I honestly think they are worth their weight in gold, that they can take some of these concepts and put them into something simple, because those really good science communicators are amazing. Because I will admit, scientists were not always taught to do the communication as well, and a lot of people struggle with that because we're very good at talking that very technical, talking about amongst other scientists, and we can go into all the jargon in the world. Sometimes trying to simplify that, we're like, what? Oh wait, you mean that wasn't simple?
Yeah.
And sometimes that happens with theology as well.
I think every field, like when you get into that higher level, it's always like that. You don't start talking like that overnight. It kind of develops over time.
Yeah.
And you just think, that's just common lingo. You don't realize, no, that's not common lingo. People don't know what that means. Yeah, I remember, I think it was the end of my undergrad, I was talking to my supervisor, and there was a new student that was going to start their honors project, and we were just talking, and my supervisor actually turns to her, was like, eventually you will understand what we just said. Because I never realized I was even talking in jargon, but technically I was.
Yeah.
So it is one of those, it takes time to develop those skills. We don't necessarily realize we do that, but yes, developing how do you take on a scientific problem? Like, how do you go about setting up a study? How do you actually digest information from the literature even? Like, even reading a scientific paper, like we do, like I do it day in, day out, like I can, but it's something that actually, no, we're actually trained to do. We actually have to learn it. It's not something that, if you have no background, is it easy to just pick up, the latest journal article, read it, and actually understand it? No. But it'd be the same thing if I read, and I've read things outside of my field, and usually I can kind of grasp a little bit, but a lot of the time I'm like, wait, I'm a little lost here, because they start going into things that I'm like, I don't know. But there's a reason that you have so many specialties, is because there's no way anybody knows everything. I'm far from it. So,
you could be sitting there talking theology, because the same process is required, and the same amount of detail. Like when I go to do a sermon, I'm just not reading the text, but I'm studying the Greek and the Hebrew and how it's translated and all of those kinds of things in order to figure out, and am I always right? No, I'm not. Right?
You know what? I think that's something that people need to understand a little bit more of is, you know what? Nobody's always right either. I know in science especially, I'll be the first to say, a lot of our hypotheses, like are kind of, when we're going into an experiment, we always have a hypothesis what we think is going to happen. I'd say 95% of the time we're wrong. That comes with the territory. But we test our hypothesis, and the goal of that is actually to try to disprove our hypothesis. Because if we just went for something that's going to, oh yeah, no, it's going to show it's right, well, then we really don't learn anything.
Yeah.
So ours is all about trying to prove ourselves wrong. And like I said, most of the time that's what we do. But then when we take that information we take, so just getting a result that says, well, no, that's not the case, doesn't mean it's a bad experiment, doesn't mean it's a waste of time. Sometimes I've gotten more information from an experiment not working how I expected it to than one working how I expected it to.
And I wish our sociology professor had told us that.
That's an important thing. I think because you get a lot of undergrads when they start in the lab, they think everything's going to work the first time. Like they come in all bright-eyed and then we're like, sweet summer child. We're here to crash your dreams.
Yeah.
Then they start talking to us very cynical grad students that we're used to everything failing. And it's like, yeah, you will soon come to understand we are not the most optimistic bunch for a reason. But it's funny, you see these undergrads because they're kind of, a lot of the time they're taught all these things that worked in science. So they, when they're looking at like all these experiments that they're taught, they learned what worked. They don't realize how many iterations happened or how much of that was by chance that, hey, they stumbled upon this. It's like my favorite phrase in science has always been the scientific phrase that heralds in most scientific discoveries is not eureka, I found it, but oh, that's funny. It is so true. It is so true. Because that's normally what it is. It's literally like, it's not oh yeah, we got this idea, it's gonna work. That's very, very seldom the case. It's more often it's like we get a result like, wait, this makes no sense. Back to the drawing board.
When you were saying, somebody coming in and talking to you in language, that happens all the time when I go to my doctor. He starts talking and I'm like, I go out and they'll say, what's wrong? Yeah, I don't know, I got these pills.
You know what? A lot of the time, it's the same thing with a lot of family. Like, I don't know how many times for dad and stuff, it's like, okay, here's he'll give me, okay, here's what they gave me. It's like, and then I'll go figure out, okay, so this is really what's going on. Or I've actually done this before where I sent him in with a list of questions he's to ask the doctor, and he has to report back those answers to me. And then I can tell him what's going on. But most of the time, they're not good communicators.
They really aren't. And you go to the pharmacy, the pharmacist is usually pretty good because she's got some knowledge on that. So she can say, well, this is what's going on with you, and this is why you need to take this medication. I'm like, oh, okay, thanks.
That's why they
in there. But I have to say, I am so happy that you joined us because I think there's so much information out there and so much misinformation.
You know what? It is true. There's a lot of information out there. And one of the things is sometimes that information is constantly changing. It's not necessarily that people don't know what they're doing. It's more our knowledge on this is also evolving from day to day.
Right.
Like one thing I will give with the whole COVID thing going on, this is the fastest I've seen science moving in quite some time. And that's because we basically you are seeing global efforts, and it is that collaborative effort. We've already got national trials up and going, which they usually take months to years to get together. But yet we've done them in like a month out. We're like, okay, we got this, we're in. Your funding agencies are throwing money at this left, right, and center, which it does help. But you've also got scientists that are not traditionally virology that have pivoted towards it as well too. So, or actually like my PhD supervisor, he's cardiovascular research. So not really COVID, but he works a lot with the cardiologist at the hospital. And, they just can't realistically, they don't have the time to read all the papers that are coming out. So what my supervisor has actually done is It's like, no, he takes on that. He reads through the papers and he basically gives them like a short 3-sentence summary of what's going on. And that's
executive
just
notes.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And okay, this is what you guys need to know when you're treating your patients.
Wow.
Well, you're going into some really, really good stuff, and my head is going like a million miles an hour of everything that I want to ask. So maybe we should just start this.
Yeah.
So we'll get all this on recording, and so probably the best thing to do is for Diane to introduce you, and then maybe you tell us what your focus is. And anyway, you guys take it over, and whenever I want to, I'll jump in.
Well, welcome to my favorite niece. Shh, don't tell Sarah.
Or Darcy, right?
Or Darcy. And Darcy might be more likely to see this than Sarah.
No, that's potential.
Yeah.
And of course, Sarah's like, no, she's the favorite. Come on.
What my cell phone says, she's my favorite niece.
Exactly,
Or she's the one that programmed her number in. Anyway.
That sounds like Sarah.
I am so happy that you could join us, Vikki. As we were thinking, who could we invite onto the show to talk with us, and so we could find out stuff. And I was thinking, who do I know that's smart? Oh, wait, my niece.
Sarah, right?
No, her sister. So I am so happy that you agreed to come on our show and talk with us. First of all, can you tell us your credentials?
So I've got a master's degree in cell biology from the University of Alberta. I'm currently working on a PhD in pharmacology from Dalhousie University. And I am also a research coordinator for the St. John Regional Hospital in laboratory medicine.
That's my niece.
So a few sciencey related things.
Just a few. So what can you tell us? You're working on a research project right now, I understand?
So through the hospital, where I am that research coordinator for lab medicine, we have been involved in trying to get some of these trials kind of up and running. So one in particular, we're looking particularly in the New Brunswick population, but this is part of a larger study, and it's more of a registry. So one of the things is with this novel coronavirus, we just don't really know as much as we would like to, obviously, and the more knowledge we have, the better we can tackle any problem. So this one is looking at when we're getting patients in, what are the different comorbidities? So we do know that different, so if someone has different disorders as well, so for example, heart disease, those that have heart disease are more likely to have a negative effect with COVID versus say somebody that's young and healthy. Age is another thing. So we're looking at what are these factors that are contributing to either a worse outcome or a better outcome. So we're looking at, how many of them are going into the ICU, how many of them are going on ventilators, how many recover. So looking at all of that, we're also trying to get some samples that we're actually sending off to the National Research Council, and they're going to start looking at the proteomics. So looking at what's all the different things in the blood. So proteomics is kind of, let's just look at every protein that's in that blood. So we can figure out, okay, what's going on? What do we have more of? What do we have less of? Is there some new things in here that aren't normal? So what is it actually doing in our cell? What is it making? What is it doing? What proteins is it making? What is it telling us to shut off? So trying to figure out, once it's in, what is it doing? And trying to figure that out. And that's been done in collaboration with various researchers in Halifax as well as Saskatchewan. There's also another clinical trial that they're looking at using the serum from people that have recovered from COVID. So when someone's recovered, they should be producing antibodies. And this is something that happens with all viral infections. Once your immune system has, actually defeated this virus, because that's how most viruses are defeated, is our immune system kicks in. It's like, no, I see you, I'm going to take you out. But what it does, and at the same time, is there's another type of cell in there that says, I'm going to remember you if I see you again. And that's where the antibodies come in. It produces these antibodies. And those antibodies, if say that virus comes back, and this is why, usually you don't get the same virus again, or the main reason vaccines work is it's literally, we give you a little bit of the virus to make your body go, okay, yeah, I got this thing. I remember you now. So the next time I see it, or next time your body sees it, it can attack it very quickly and makes it so it cannot make you sick. So what they're trying to do is take these antibodies from people that have recovered and then use that as a treatment as well. So we've got a couple of them that are going on in St. John, and even there's a lot more clinical trials also underway across the country as well as globally that are looking at different things to treat various COVID symptoms.
So how long do you think, I know this is just a shot in the dark, you're not going to give us a direct answer, but how long do you think until a vaccine is found or developed?
I'm thinking, if I'm being hopeful, end of the year. There are some groups that are suggesting we might have one as early as September. That might be a little optimistic. That being said, there are vaccines that are currently in phase 1 clinical trials. So a phase 1 clinical trial it's looking at a very small group of people, and it's just looking, is it safe? So that's the first type of clinical trial we do with any new pharmaceutical, with any new vaccine. We just make sure, is it safe? Because obviously we don't want to give something that's going to harm somebody. So they have thus far been able to show with some phase 1 clinical trials that yes, it's safe and it is producing antibodies. So that's a good sign. Actually, that is one vaccine that's being developed in Canada. There's some more that are being developed in Britain, and they're also in phase 1 clinical trials. The next phase will be going into phase 2 trials, and I have a suspicion we might fast track the phase 2 and phase 3. So a phase 2 clinical trial it's a little bigger than phase 1, but it's still a relatively small amount of numbers, and that's when you're starting to look, is it efficacious? So does it actually work? Is the main thing, because obviously if we're going to produce something, we need it to work, and that's the main question behind the phase 2 and phase 3 trials. The difference between phase 2 and phase 3 is the size of the trial. So a phase 2 is relatively small, it might have maybe a couple hundred, where phase 3s tend to be thousands of people. So it's much bigger. So we kind of, small scale, make sure it's safe, make sure it's working, and if that works, then we go to a bigger one. So if I can see them kind of doing a little bit, okay, quickly do the phase 2. If we are showing it's okay, let's quickly move into a phase 3. You are going to see things moving along quicker, because one downside to a lot of clinical trials is they take a lot of time. But you are seeing that a lot of the red tape that we normally have there, people are willing to be like, okay, no, we're going to fast track this. I do know from research perspective, so from our research ethics board, for example, any COVID related project is given priority. So it's going to be reviewed much quicker than it normally would.
Okay.
It will still undergo the same review. It will still have the same safety precautions. So it'll still have to show it's safe and it's effective. But some of the red tape and more the bureaucracy that comes with some of these, they're going to try to fast track a little bit more.
So putting in layman's terms, you got a stack of things to go through, and the COVID stuff gets put right on the top.
Pretty much.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Yep. Everyone else is like, okay, you guys can wait.
A question that I have, and this comes up so much, and I'd like for people to hear it from a professional, someone with some letters behind her name. One of the questions or one of the comments that you often see is that even the scientists don't know what they're doing, because one day they say it's one way and the next day they say it's something else, and they can't even figure this out. Why is that? And because we're dealing with something that's new.
And that's the thing, and it is true. We are adapting as we learn more. So it's not that we don't know what we're doing. Unfortunately, there is quite a bit we just don't know, and that's because it is new. But this is why we are researching it. So on top of I've kind of mentioned some of these clinical trials, there's also a lot of basic research that's going into the cell level, looking at them in animal models that are just trying to figure out, how is this thing working? Like, what is it doing? So as we learn more, and as more people get sick and we gather more information, so as I mentioned, that registry we have, the more people we put into that, because that actually is feeding into a national registry that's also going to go into the World Health Organization's registry, so a global registry. The more we learn, the more we can kind of adapt what we know. So anything like this, Science is one of these self-correcting things. It's not the, well, no, I think this, therefore I'm always going to keep thinking this. No, as we get more information that says, well, no, you're wrong, or maybe we're just not completely correct, we adapt what we think. So as we progress and as we learn more, we might end up changing what we think we know, and that's because we've actually been able to look at it further. Sometimes, this is why we have those phased clinical trials. So I mentioned how there's the different phases. We do that on purpose because sometimes it'll work at a small level, but once we go to a larger population, it doesn't. And that actually has happened for quite a few drugs. A lot of drugs don't ever make it to market because when we do these clinical trials, we saw an effect at a small size, but when we actually looked at a larger size, it just didn't work. And that's just because we're looking at more variability and therefore finding, no, it's not as good as we thought it was. And that's why we have to do that, and why we constantly have to keep researching it. It's why instead of just going with, okay, what we said on day one, let's keep with that if we know it's not correct. Right. And yes, you are going to see things continuously evolve as we learn more. So when we're changing the recommendations, it's not because we have no idea what we're doing, we're just throwing something out there. We're going with, okay, based on the new knowledge we've obtained, we are modifying our guidelines to fit that. And again, it's trying to stay on top of things as much as possible and giving people the best possible guidelines.
So that's why sometimes when you have a medication that has worked with a small amount of people, and then all of a sudden people are saying, well, I think this medication might work, and you bring it to a larger group of people, you realize, no,
it doesn't.
It's not working as well as we thought it would, because we had good results back here, but not such good results.
Exactly. And we are seeing that, like hydroxychloroquine is kind of one of the big ones. So some of the small little trials, initially they thought, we might be seeing something. When we're starting to look at bigger trials, we're actually finding it's not as effective. Now, there's still a lot of debate on that. There's still a lot of work that has to be done. So I'm not going to say one way or the other whether or not it's going to be effective. I would not suggest taking it unless recommended by a doctor. There are side effects that go with every drug. There is no such thing as a perfectly safe drug that will never cause anything. So definitely don't recommend running out to get anything like that. But yeah, unfortunately things do evolve as we get more information. And this is why, like I said, we are putting a lot of resources into researching this so we can gain that knowledge so that we can adapt to give the best recommendations and therefore hopefully decrease, basically flatten this curve and make it so that we're not going to get overrun in our intensive care units, which is the biggest thing. Because unfortunately, when you do have that situation happen, more people die. And I think most of us will agree we don't want to see that happening. We want to try to keep our death rates pretty low. But that's the thing, as we gain that information, we're going to have to adapt and modify things so that we're giving that better information. So it's when they're changing these recommendations, it's not because they have no idea. It's just, no, we've got new information that suggests this is better for you.
So one of the, this is a highly contagious virus, very, very highly contagious, more so than like the flu or anything else. But one of the things that the reason why we've been asked to sort of shelter in place is because we don't want to overwhelm our health system. Is that basically why we've been asked to stay home?
It is partially, but also one of the things is these big gatherings, viruses, they don't care. They're not really all that picky about who they go to. They're very much like, oh, you guys are gathering? Yeah, I'm going to come along with you, and I'm going to go to the next guy, and then they're going to take it home. So the sheltering in place is also, okay, it's decreasing the ability for this virus to spread. I don't think any of us are doing it because it's fun. I think all of us are like, no, I want to go out. I want to be able to go back to how things were. Trust me, I'm definitely in that category. But the sheltering in place is one, yes. By decreasing the spread, it does decrease the strain on the healthcare system. But it also will decrease the amount of people that get it. So one thing we have found is the people that are not sheltering in place, they are still going out and not paying attention to this are usually the people, unfortunately, that are getting this too. Mm-hmm. The last case we have in New Brunswick, that's actually the exact case. It's a case up in Campbellton, which we're protesting keeping the border between Quebec and New Brunswick closed, because right now New Brunswick is doing really well in terms of how we've dealt this. We're actually on phase yellow, so we're kind of starting to open up a bit more, but that's because we've had 121 cases. We have that one active case right now and 0 deaths. But we've seen a steady decrease. Like in the last month, we have like a handful of cases, and they kind of, pop up. And most of the time we know where they come from. And that has been because New Brunswick shut down early. Basically, they're like, nope, down March 17th, on St. Patrick's Day when everyone wants to go out, they shut all the bars.
Yeah.
I was hoping to celebrate my comps being done, and the bars are shut down. But
and just to put this in perspective, the population of New Brunswick is what, 750,000?
Something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
We have one of the lowest rates even per capita.
Yeah. Well, I'm here in St. Lawrence County in northern New York, 107,000 people, and I think I checked this morning, and 197 or 198 cases.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the shelter in place is doing two things. Yes, it's making it so that we're not overrunning, we're not increasing those caseload, and therefore not overrunning our hospitals. Because if we overrun the hospitals, and unfortunately it's going to get to the point, there have been places where, like Italy's a prime example of this, where they literally have to choose who's getting ventilators and who's not. And they actually put it that if you're above this age, we won't put on a ventilator because they didn't have any. And knowing some of the physicians here, I know that would absolutely kill them to have to make that decision. And I don't think any of us would ever want to have to make that call of, well, you get a ventilator, but you don't.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the thing. We want to prevent that from ever happening. In addition to that, the other issue is if the hospitals are overrun with everything else, say if you have other issues, because other issues are still popping up, people still get sick besides COVID, there also wouldn't be a bed available for them as well. So in addition to those that die of COVID, you'd have more people dying from other things as well.
Right.
And the other issue is obviously the rationing of PPE, so personal protective equipment for hospitals. This means gowns, gloves, N95 respirators. These are important to have because they're in close contact. So unfortunately in healthcare, as probably most people have, if you've ever had an exam or anything, they can't really keep that 6-foot distance from you. It just isn't feasible.
Especially if you put a respirator on.
Yeah. And in some of these, what we call aerosol generating procedures, so in other words, those little droplets, and that's how this virus spreads, is the droplets that we kind of expunge when we're breathing out or talking or coughing. They get into the air, and obviously we don't want our healthcare workers getting sick, because then this adds to the issue that now we have less healthcare workers.
Right.
Not to mention how many people do they come in contact with that it can spread. So the staying at home is to, 1, protect yourself, 2, also decreasing how much it's able to spread. Because if say someone is sick but they're not going out, they're not going to spread the virus around. And one of the things with this virus is, more often than not, you are going to be spreading it before you show symptoms. So even though you think you're healthy, you're perfectly fine, you could still have the virus and still spread it to someone else.
Right.
But you don't know you're doing that. And that's actually one of the things, that the reason this virus has spread so well is it has a longer incubation period. And therefore you're more likely to have that time where you're spreading it without knowing it. Mm-hmm. So it's not that people are, I'm sick, I'm going to go out. It's that they think they're fine, but unfortunately not.
So that means that when people are gathered in large groups and close proximity, it's probably going to take a couple of weeks before that, like I think they said 14 to 20 days before anything shows up. So if you're opening in stage 1 and they're waiting almost, 2 to 3 weeks before they go to stage 2, what they're waiting for is to see. Yeah.
And that's what they did in New Brunswick, is there was a 2-week gap between each of our opening cases for that reason. Because again, and when you're talking about like these big gatherings, how many people are you going to come in contact with if you aren't staying at home? Say you are kind of out and about. how many people are you going to come in contact with in those 2 weeks that you could potentially spread it to?
Right.
And then how many would those go on to? And that's how this virus has been so good. It's like, for example, there was a church in South Korea. There was one patient there that infected pretty much the entire church.
Yeah.
And it's because it was a very big church and therefore very close proximity. And she felt fine, and then of course, then they go out. This happened in Newfoundland as well, where a funeral, actually in that case, spread it. So it's something so small and you think, oh, it's nothing about it. But the reason for staying home is to protect everyone, not just yourself, but those around you.
So a question then, what's the difference between going to like a church and spending an hour and a half there, or going out grocery shopping? Like, what's the difference in those two scenarios?
So some part of it is time of contact. So in a church, you're probably going to have more time that you're in contact with the person. And this is why they've given that 6 foot distance. And even if most people have probably been to the grocery store recently, have seen that you're supposed to be 6 feet apart from people. I know not everyone's following that. So, and it's frustrating because I've been very good. I try to keep my distance from people. But when you're in a church, you're going to be in closer contact for more period of time. And that's why one of the things about closing down churches, not just churches, but anywhere where you have these large gatherings.
Right.
It's because we don't want to have a prolonged period of time and therefore more of a chance for that virus to jump from one person to the next. Because obviously the longer you're in contact, the more likely it is to happen.
Okay, good.
So we don't have this regulation here in the States, but I know that Pastor Peggy has mentioned that in Alberta, at any public gatherings, they're not allowed to sing. Can you speak to that?
My guess would be it's because if you're singing, you're probably expelling further, right? So one of the things is 6 foot is the average droplet, and how far that droplet can spread. If say you're singing and therefore you're projecting further, or if you're coughing, it could go further, is another thing. So it's also why, cover your cough, don't just cough, which people should be doing anyways, outside of this as well. Sorry, there are some things that people should have learned long before this, but it's that it's spreading further. So therefore that 6 foot distance has to be further. Right. It's the same thing for like runners. We've been told the same thing, like, no, we really can't be in groups because when we're running, we're breathing heavier. So that 6 foot now needs to be drastically increased.
And actually, it's funny, back in March when everybody was shutting down, I caught a video of the health officer in Alaska, and she gave this, just wanted to connect with you, blah, 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 and, don't forget to maintain social distancing, and I'm going to be going out running. And she was in her running gear. She went out and she said, but when you're running, don't forget you have to have 20 feet distance. And that was like, wow, I hadn't even thought of that.
Yeah. I know anytime I'm coming up on somebody, so if I'm running, I purposely am trying to find less traveled routes. So not somewhere where there's going to be a lot of people so I don't have to navigate as much, but always making sure I do leave a significant amount of distance between me and someone else. So if someone's coming on the sidewalk, more often than not, I'll go into the road. Obviously, if safe, I'm not going to jump in front of a car. Trust me, getting hit by a car is not fun. So
you speak from experience.
Sadly, yes.
Oh.
I got hit back in October.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, drunk driver on City Road.
Oh.
Yeah, he pretty much popped the jeep up on the sidewalk and got my arm.
Oh.
Yeah.
Your mother did not tell me.
Oh.
Or maybe she
know?
Oh, Mom knows.
Okay. I was thinking we're gonna have to cut this part of the video out.
No, she knows. She actually, unfortunately, it was all road rash, so she saw the entire arm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So don't jump in front of a car. That might, but again, it's leaving that distance. So you do need to take into account when we're saying that 6 foot, that's given the average, average talking distance, average breathing distance. If you're doing something where you're going to be expelling more air, for example, something more forceful, so singing and coughing, then you do need further distance between you. Okay. So it is sometimes adapting to the situation. So the 6 foot is under normal circumstances. If you're doing anything where you're going to be breathing heavier or you're going to try to project your voice, for example, you probably want to leave more distance.
Okay, cool. Now you had mentioned about coughing and coughing into the elbow, and something we should be doing anyway. And when all of this started, I remember saying to somebody when I was disinfecting the church, this has probably highlighted things that we've been missing and stuff that we should be doing. We should have been doing before, but we will definitely be doing from now on. Can you highlight some of the things that have come to light because of COVID that you hope the general population will just make it a habit?
Number 1, wash your hands. It doesn't matter. Cold and flu seasons, the best thing you can do to prevent yourself from getting cold and flus is washing your hands. Hands are dirty. We're touching all sorts of surfaces. Wiping down surfaces that are commonly touched in buildings, because that's also where things can spread. Coughing into your elbow, because again, you don't want to cough into your hand and then go shake somebody's hand. That's not a great idea, because then you're passing on. So I've been doing that for years, that if I'm coughing into my elbow. I'm not coughing into my hand and passing that along. Generally, if you're not feeling well, don't go out and about. Try to limit your exposure, because just like other viruses are like COVID, they do like to spread and go about. Basic hygiene, like I said, is probably the biggest one. So washing your hands, being cognizant of what you're touching as well. So it's hard to get used to. It's something I've gotten used to because of my background in a lab. Of if I touch something, it's now contaminated, right? So my hands. That's why when you're out and about, they don't recommend gloves, because people will touch everything with the gloves and then they don't realize the gloves are now contaminated. You cannot touch anything else with those gloves or the virus passes. So if you're touching your phone with your gloves, don't do that. You know what? Cleaning your phone on a regular basis isn't a bad idea. To take a disinfectant to your phone. Your phone gets very dirty. It's something people don't think of, but it's actually quite prevalent.
And your mouse.
Yeah. You know what? Anything that you touch highly should be wiped down at least every so often. Yeah. Don't do the never needs to. Light fixtures are another one that people don't realize we're constantly touching. Light
fixtures or switches?
Switches, sorry.
Okay. I was gonna say, I don't touch the light fixtures too often.
Sorry, it's the light switches. But like I said, the number 1 would definitely be wash your hands. Like that should have been, actually that was figured out in the 1700s that we should be doing that. So it's sad that it's actually one of the things I've kind of really been like, it's really taking people this long to figure this out. But
now once COVID's over, we don't need to wash our hands for 20 seconds, do we?
Yes, we do. So the 20 seconds thing is nothing to do with COVID. It is just how you should be washing your hands. So this is why you can use a thing like happy birthday. I know someone who uses like the first verse of Baird's Privateers. So you don't have to do happy birthday. Find a song you like and use that as your washing your hands song. Or once you get so used to it, you will not have to really even think about it, because mine is like, and it's not just, put the soap and water on and you're done. In between your fingers, over top, the knuckles, making sure you're cleaning between the thumbs. So your entire hand has to be cleaned, not just and done. It's making sure you're scrubbing in between, and a good scrub, so 20 seconds. It is the recommendation, and that's not just for COVID, for everything.
Yeah. I think I'm going to be like a hand washing sort of guru after this. And I'm going to go to public bathrooms and go, excuse me, you didn't wash your hands long enough. Please get back here.
Oh, I wish some people would do that. I've always.
What about those people who don't wash their hands at all?
I was just going to say, those ones really, like, I cringe. I'm like, I cannot.
How do I get out of the bathroom after they've left?
No, because then they go touching everything, and it's like, no.
I think in my prediction, in the next few years, we are going to see more and more bathrooms designed so that they do not have doors or door handles.
That wouldn't be a bad thing. I do I'm not gonna lie, for bathroom door handles, if I don't have to touch them, or sometimes what I'll do is, like, when I dry my hands off with a paper towel, I'll actually grab it with the paper towel and then toss the paper towel in the garbage as I'm going out, but I'm not actually touching that door handle.
Yeah.
That's if they have paper towel.
Yeah, I know, I hate the ones that don't. I do prefer paper towel, and paper towel is actually better to dry your hands off than actual dryers.
Really?
It was on Mythbusters.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah.
I
They showed
haven't
it.
seen that one.
Mythbusters.
Yeah, but if people are wondering why that 20 seconds is the detergent, so that soap actually helps to break up the capsule that makes up the virus. It is also the same thing for bacteria. It actually kills them. So that's why you have that 20 seconds.
Okay. And that's why also with your disinfectants, like spraying them on the counter and then wiping them right off, that
Give
doesn't
them
really do it.
a few seconds to actually work.
Right.
I was surprised when I read the Clorox wipe container. It said to make sure that the surface is wet for a full 4 minutes.
Yeah, if I wipe off with like a Clorox wipe, I let it air dry.
Yeah.
In a lab, we tend to use 70% ethanol in actually how we normally sterilize a hood. So something that we have to be very cautious about getting contamination of bacteria, viruses, and all this. We spray the thing down with the ethanol, and it stays on there for about 15 minutes and let it dry out.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, like I said, most places don't need to be that sterile. Like, I'm talking cell cultures when we're dealing with cells, and we have to, like, any little tiny thing, and you can have weeks or months of work go out the window. It's annoying. It's why we're also a little cautious when new students start, because most of the time they haven't learned how to keep it sterile. And it's almost a guarantee every student, and I did it when I first started as well. Yeah, you're going to contaminate a few, and then you learn, that's why you got to be cautious here.
Yeah.
So is there anything that you would like us to know, or our viewers to know, that we haven't asked already? Is there, something that you can think of?
When you're looking at, like, some people are kind of freaked out where they'll read through the symptom list and they think, oh my God, I have a symptom, like, therefore I must have COVID. That is not always the case. So don't always freak out. Always monitor. Like, if you're worried, monitor, and you can do self-monitoring things. Like a prime example is, I just ran a 23K. I've done 2 32-kilometer runs in the last week. My muscles are a little sore. That's on the list of COVID symptoms, but I'm pretty sure I can explain why my muscles are sore. So I'm not going to freak out about that. So part of it is always kind of take all the information. Don't just believe everything that's being said. Just because certain world leaders promote things, do not always follow them. Please don't drink bleach. It will kill the virus, but it also kills you. Listen to the medical experts when they're saying, here's our recommendations. Follow the guidelines. Whenever possible, keep 6 feet apart. Wash your hands regularly. Be kind to people as well. I've definitely noticed sometimes going to the grocery store, the cashiers seem way more stressed out, and from what I'm hearing from some people, they are getting a lot of crap, which is not needed. We're all stressed out. Nobody is doing this because we like it. I'm definitely not doing it because I like it. I would love to be able to just go back to normal, but we need to kind of take these precautions to protect ourselves, to protect those around us, because even if it's, you think, okay, I'm young, I'll be safe. What about your grandparents? What about your parents? Maybe people that are a bit more vulnerable. They might not be, and it's very likely you could pass it to them. So it's
the reality is we don't know enough about the virus yet to be able to determine whether or not it's going to affect the younger children or middle-aged or whatever.
Well, now there's this other, is it a disease that is affecting young children who've had COVID?
And that's
Pardon me?
That is actually very possible.
They've been talking about a lot. The governor here has been talking about, there's 137 cases in New York State of children that have this new issue because of COVID.
Well, keep in mind, if the virus is attacking the lungs, next stop is the heart.
Yeah.
We're actually very concerned. I know a lot of cardiologists are quite concerned that we're going to start to see more heart issues from people that have recovered from COVID. So it's not just I'm going to get a cold, I'm going to feel like crap for a few weeks, but it could also have lasting implications. So even when Kent was talking yesterday about, him and Beth have recovered and they're struggling still to, walk 50 feet.
Right.
So it's not just they are on the mend, they are recovering, but it's still not back to normal, and it's going to take time to get there. And we don't know what the long-term implications are. It wouldn't be the first virus to have long-term implications.
Yeah. There's one actually last question that I have, and this comes more from a personal nature because somebody in my congregation really suffers with allergies.
Okay.
So they've got a lot of the symptoms of COVID. They're an essential worker. They're on the front lines. They're grocery stores. So, so people are coming up and they're sneezing and stuff like that. And how do you tell, that line between, I've got allergies or COVID? For her as an individual, one of her questions is, when do I know which is which?
And the only way to 100% know it would be testing.
Wow.
It's the only guarantee, but that's also because COVID sometimes can be very mild. And that's also one of the reasons it spreads so quickly is that some people don't think they actually have it. But that being said, if say this is something like her allergy symptoms are probably very similar from what she's had in previous years. So if she's been outside and she's coming in and she's sneezing because, regular allergies, that's normal. So this is when it's kind of taking what is normal for me versus what's not. This is happening in February, March. A lot of the time I come in from outside and I'm bad. I'm sniffling when I first come in. It goes away in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But that's a normal thing for me. Am I going to think that's COVID? No. And like I said, muscle soreness. No, it's definitely not COVID. I know where it came from.
Okay.
So a lot of it's going to have to be comparing to what is normal for you versus anything abnormal. So if she gets anything like, say she's coughing more than usual, then that might be a sign that, okay. So it'd be something to keep monitoring. If she's fine, maybe, I feel like I might be coughing more than I normally would with allergies, that might be a time to get tested.
Right.
But a lot of it is going to be what is normal for you and what's not. So a lot of these they have kind of prefaced them a new onset of.
Mm-hmm.
Because some of these symptoms are very common, like I said. And, if there's something normal, we can't say, oh, no, everybody has COVID. No. So it's going to have to come down to, okay, what's normal for her, what's not. So the best thing for her to do is monitor it. And if she does feel, even if she just suspects maybe that then it might be worth looking into getting tested just to be cautious. She probably wouldn't and most likely would be fine, but it's still better to be safe than sorry.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
There was a question I wanted to ask.
Okay.
So we have talked a little bit about masks, and I know your stance on that. Here in New York State, if you are out and cannot maintain social distancing, the 6 feet, you are required to wear a mask.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that being said, if you were planning on going into a store and buying anything, you're going to be within 6 feet of the person that you're giving the cash to, right? What about people who have breathing issues such as asthma and stuff? Breathing through the mask, how do you have any ideas or suggestions on how they can work through that? And if you don't, that's okay. I'll just take this part out.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think it's going to come down to the type of mask. So one of the issues is a lot of them being, fabrics aren't always as breathable. So if they can get a fabric that might be somewhat breathable, or if they can get surgical masks, it might help a little bit, but there's no way to like really, because that's the thing, masks are meant to try to stop you from breathing too far out.
Right.
So yeah, it is kind of very hard. And you're right, when it comes down to it, if you can avoid distance, like if you can put 6 feet between you, that is better than mask would.
Yeah.
If you can't, and this might be okay, if you are having breathing problems, maybe as much as possible keep distance, have the mask available and only use as needed. But whenever possible, try to do more that you're keeping distance so you don't need to have a mask. That's, unfortunately, it's not really a great answer. There's no real, because unfortunately a lot of the masks that will probably be more comfortable would be respirators, and unfortunately those really do need to be saved for frontline workers, like frontline hospital workers in those aerosol generating procedures, because like I said, otherwise they are going to get it, because those masks actually help to protect you from getting anything. That being said, they also have to be fit tested, so you are actually individually tested for those ones of what size you want to wear. They're not as simple as the regular mask.
Right.
But they have more breathability because they have to be, because they filter, but a lot of masks aren't doing the filtering. So that's where it's, as much as I wish I could give the, oh yeah, here's a great answer, it really, unfortunately, there's not one.
So basically the answer is stay at home, stay safe. If you
Yes.
have to go out, stay away from people.
Yeah. And you know what? I do know around here we've had a lot of like stores that actually put up plexiglass between you and the cashier. So I don't actually ever physically interact with my cashier. Like there's a plexiglass between me and them, which I'm fine with.
Yeah, and there's shields here, but they're not enclosed.
No.
And I was into a store the other day, and the guy said, "Do you want this in a bag?" And I thought, "Oh, save a bag, I can carry it out." And he did step back, but I had to reach around this plexiglass to get the stuff. And I'm thinking, this just isn't adding up for me somehow.
No, now every store is a little different. I do know, like I know for Superstore around here, actually the cashier bags everything, puts it at the end. They are not accepting reusable bags right now, and that's just so that you're not reaching.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one of the things you're going to notice is, unfortunately, we have these protocols in place, but some people, they don't, not ill-intentioned. It's not that they're doing it on purpose, but you know what? You don't even think, and you go to do something, right?
Yeah.
So it's part of it is you try to do the best you can. Unfortunately, yes, there might be times where it's not 100%, but you try to limit that as much as possible.
And I love what you said about be kind.
Yes.
Because you don't know what the person who's violating your space, you don't know what they're thinking. They definitely aren't doing it maliciously.
No, there's very few people that I think are actually being very malicious. Like you've got the few idiots out there that, I'm not going to follow any of this. But most people, I think it's more accidental. And usually you can tell it's more accidental.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so those ones, I'm not going to freak out on them because, again, it's new for all of us. It's not that we're used to this. Even I sometimes, like I'm very good at ensuring that, but I have to think my way through it. I can't. It's not just a natural instinct for me to ensure I'm 6 feet away from everybody.
Yeah, it's true. And especially in stores where you're in an area that isn't defined aisles. I'm thinking like the produce section in our local Walmarts. They're just all over the place. And
wow. Ours are actually good to be.
You've got the cooler section here, and then you've got bins at an angle, and it creates havoc in my mind.
See, I will give the ones here they have it marked on the floors. These are the directions you're going to go. Now, not everyone, most people follow them. There are still some that I just don't.
They do have those in the regular aisles, but in the produce section, just the way the produce section is set up, it's chaos. Bacterial chaos, I tells you.
Exactly. And when you do bring home fruits and vegetables, definitely ensure you're washing. That should have been done beforehand, but still make sure you're washing things.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what? And I've actually done that where I pretty much wipe down most things that come into the house before I put it away.
Yep.
So did you see that video, the doctor in Michigan, Minnesota, I don't know where he was, that had it set up, my sterile zone and all this?
That's actually what I do.
Okay.
I did see that, and it's like, oh, so basically I just set it up like I would for any other sterile environment. Is I have my non-sterile. As I clean it, I move it into a sterile environment, and that's actually what I do. I just clear off my table. I have one half that's my dirty half, and the half that's clean. And as I clean it, I move it along, and it's done.
Yeah.
It doesn't really take. It takes a few minutes. It maybe adds a few minutes to putting things away, but it does ensure that, hey, if say somehow something that you did pick up does have the virus, you're getting rid of it before you actually put it away and then get yourself sick.
Yeah. So, another thing, I don't know if it was on that video or something else I read, but when you're out shopping, be very intentional about what you're touching. Don't touch the products on the shelf unless in your mind you've committed to buy that product.
Yes, and that's what I do. As much as it's why I tend to go for safe things. Unfortunately, I do have a lot of allergies, so sometimes I need to read labels to see, is this something I can even eat, right?
Yeah.
I've purposely kind of stuck to things I know are safe instead of, okay, I need to pick this up and read the label. Now, because the less people are touching what you're buying, the less likely things are going. So if everyone practices that, only touch the things you intend to buy, you're also going to limit that spread. Because the virus only lives on surfaces for so long. It's not as if it's indefinite, but it can be 2 to 3 days depending on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
So if I definitely go in with I only pick up what I intend to buy.
Yeah, and the stock people, God bless them for the work they're doing.
Oh gosh, yes.
There's only so much that they can do in the overnight session.
Yeah.
They're not going to be cleaning every little piece of.
They can't. It's not reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Hopefully people understand, look, when we're looking at how we're getting through this, a lot of the people that are out on that front lines are your minimum wage workers. Like, it's the grocery workers. It's a person working at Tim Hortons. For the American ones, that's our coffee shop. We all need to occasionally
get it. We have Tim Hortons here in Norfolk. In Norfolk, New York, there is a Tim Hortons.
Oh, so they've got them with the times. But you know what? A lot of these people, and they are putting themselves at risk a lot of the time because they're out and about. But if it wasn't for them, where would we be? Like, we would all be in a much worse off position. So this is what I mean, like, be kind to them.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to understand what we're calling essential workers. Maybe we need to continue that well after this. I've always thought we should have continued it well before in advance. You know what? These people that are working the front lines, that work in retail, that deal with you, just be kind to them in general. It doesn't have to be just during a pandemic. That should be something that we're constantly doing. Because you know what? I've always joked, it's like, no, of course I want to be nice to the person working at Timmy's. They're making my coffee for me. I couldn't survive without my coffee. Like, me without coffee is a zombie. So, to me, that's essential. That's a very important job they're doing. So you're damn right I'm going to be nice to them.
Now, it's interesting. There's a little ice cream shop just
that's also
down
essential.
the street. Yeah, so that's essential. I went down the other day, excuse me, and there's a lineup, it's taking so long and blah, blah, blah. Last year I would have been grumbling about it, but I get up to my spot and I'm wondering, where is she? What's she doing? I mean, there's nobody in there other than her, so she doesn't need to disinfect anything. Anyway, she takes my order and then goes and washes her hands for the 20 seconds,
Yep.
And I'm thinking, oh, God bless her. So it's not just that, they're doing the same job they've been doing before, but they're going above and beyond.
They are.
And that's taking more time. So we've got to be patient as well as kind.
And you're seeing it even in restaurants that, the waiter, when we went out for supper, he's like, normally I take the glass over here to pour your water. I can't do that since it's been touched. I'm like, oh, no, that's fine. But okay, I'll just pour it. So there are some things that are different for them. They're having to, again, clean everything off more so than usual. They need to take added steps. It might mean that, yes, it's going to take a little longer. So unfortunately, part of it is you've got to be patient. It's not the worker's fault. And it's like, you know what, I just pretty much plan in that, yes, I know groceries are going to take me longer. So I plan that into my day. Because they're doing the best they can. And like I said, if they weren't there, I'm pretty sure we'd all be in a much worse off position.
Yeah, absolutely, we would be.
So really, we've kind of got to give it off to, like, obviously the healthcare workers that are working the front lines. And I know they've been stressed. I've even talked to people in our microbiology lab who's dealing with a lot of the testing and issues, and it is stressful right now. Everybody is on edge. Everybody's, we're prepped for this. And then, your frontline workers, they're stressed out about a lot of this stuff too, but yet they're dealing with people that are stressed out and they're taking it out on the workers too. Unfortunately, I've heard of too many people doing that, and I'm just like, it's not their fault. Just a little bit of kindness goes a long way.
Yeah.
Wish your cashier have a good day, just a nice smile.
Here's an idea for you folks listening. Write down in the comments, what can you do to just make somebody's day that's working the front lines, the cashier, the gas attendant, whatever. We'd love to hear your comments.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Vikki, it has been extremely informative, and I am so happy that you've been able to come on here with us.
Thank
and
you.
Just share a little bit of and when I say a little bit, I mean just a little bit.
I don't think people want to go through the full depth of everything. I know all of it, and that's because the amount of research that's coming out, I'm not going to lie, is astronomical right now.
Right.
Like I said, this is the fastest pace I've seen in a long time. I will give that science in general, we're really trying to tackle this as quickly as possible. So there is some hope out there.
Good.
Well, you guys are doing an amazing job. The weight that you guys must have on your shoulders of being able to try to find a solution for all of us. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you and all of the other frontline workers, the hospital, the doctors, the scientists, the researchers that are really just pushing through this so that they can help not just one country or one area, but the world. Like, this is like something that nobody alive has ever seen.
The last time we saw this was 1918. There's a couple people that were still alive, but they would have been infants at the time.
Yeah. And they wouldn't remember a thing.
No, but that's the thing. This is unprecedented. This isn't something we're used to. So no, none of us really know how do we deal with this the best way we know how.
And there's no playbook. There's
no.
You can only go with your gut and how you feel. And what I loved yesterday, I was listening to something and they said you have to go with your tolerance for something. So if you feel that you can go out to the store, go out to the store, social distance, wear a mask if that's what you feel comfortable doing. But if you're a young mom, or maybe a mom that's a little older, or a dad, and you have a young family, then your tolerance might be a little different than somebody else's who might be single. So stay home and get somebody else to go pick up your groceries, or, so it's all about your tolerance.
And you know what, if you're in a high risk group, there are people out there a lot of the time that are welcoming to go get things. Like, I know my boyfriend, his grandparents are elderly, and he actually, when he goes out to get his groceries, he picks up their groceries as well, because he doesn't want them in the grocery stores because of that. Yeah. So yeah, it is a tolerance thing. If you are in a high risk group, if you can find someone that can go do it for you, most people are right now, I would say at least most people are still very decent people.
Right.
And are willing to help out.
Mm-hmm.
So we, from the bottom of our hearts, I know we thank you, and we thank you for all of the hard work that you're putting in, because I'm sure it's hours and hours and hours above and beyond. So thank you very much, and thank you for taking the time to come on.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. Hopefully everyone at least gets something out of it.
Okay, one last question off the record, okay? This COVID thing, all right? And all of us sheltering in place, right?
Conspiracy, isn't it?
This is some weird conspiracy to control us all, to implant microchips in us by Bill Gates, right? Am I true? Is that true?
No, I know Gates did predict that, yeah, this is coming, which unfortunately he's not the only one to predict that.
But he's not the only one that predicted that.
No. Unfortunately, a lot of experts have been basically saying for the past few years, this is a matter of when, not if. And this is why it's like, maybe we need to do better preparation. No, as much as I wish I could say this is a conspiracy so we can all go back to normal, I wish. Unfortunately, it's not. Still,
they're not planning.
No, I think my favorite conspiracy that I heard was, of course, Steven coming up with this one. It's a conspiracy by Netflix, who actually spread this to get more people to stay home and watch Netflix.
Pretty much. Okay, so I'm the pastor of a church, right? In my opinion, this is my opinion. You correct me if I'm wrong or if I think different than this. My church is very small in size. And I probably have 15, 20 people, including myself and somebody else, maybe 20, 22. There on a regular Sunday. My gut feeling tells me that I shouldn't reopen until there's a vaccine or the cases are zero in this area.
And that's not actually a bad way of thinking about it. Like if you were to reopen, you would need to ensure that you're sterilizing things constantly. So wiping down all of the pews. You would have to ensure you're keeping people 6 feet apart. So you couldn't do a regular, everyone congregate, and you'd have to be cautious. Maybe, like I said, maybe that decreasing singing. So if possible, and you can do things online, that might be a better bet. It's hard to say because it's kind of like you want to say you want to get people back together, but at the same time doing it safely too. Mm-hmm. So it might be that until you get the cases either extremely low down to zero, or like kind of that little, maybe a case here and there, but it's relatively zero, or a vaccine isn't the worst thing in the world. Because I think technically universities are allowed to open, but I know for my PhD, my supervisors actually said we're not going back until September. So we're working from home until September, even though technically we should be allowed to. That being said, he's even said once we go back, it's not going to go everybody, free for all. He's actually talking that like there's myself and one other PhD student, and then there's some master students that would kind of be below us, but we're kind of the two main. So I deal a lot with genomics, she deals a lot with proteins. And so it would probably end up being shifted between me and Ashley. So her group's there at one point, my group at another, and we should probably have to coordinate between each other. For my other counterpart at the hospital, the other research coordinator, right now we are technically returned to work, but we were working from home for quite some time. But again, we're actually trying to alternate when we're there to actually decrease the risk of coming in contact. So it's kind of that, even though we're technically at almost 0 cases, we're still being cautious. So I don't think it's necessarily the worst thing to think that way, because you're looking at, I want people to be safe.
Right.
So
I've heard some professionals say that, this is sort of the beginning of this pandemic kind of thing, that they suspect that once we get this COVID under control, there'll be something else.
Another wave.
Yeah. And not just another wave of COVID, but another wave of a different source. So it wouldn't be COVID-19, but it would be something else.
So it's one of the things there is concern about. So with the COVID virus, so it's the SARS-CoV-2 is the name of the actual virus, and COVID is the actual disease. It's not the only virus that can jump to human. We do know this came from a bat. We do think there was an intermediary animal, like species in there, but it did jump. And this is because of the wet markets that they have in China. anytime we have this very close contact, there's always a chance of this happening. And it's not uncommon for viruses to jump between species. It's not common that every virus does it, but the more you're in very close contact, the more prevalent that chance goes up. So there's been a lot of people that are concerned, like, okay, if we don't really look at how this thing happened, we could be in this boat again with another virus. It's why I know I've stated quite a few times, when this is all said and done, like, we're throwing a lot of research money at the COVID now. I don't think we want to stop the research just because it goes away. So a prime example, when SARS happened, it kind of faded off and everyone kind of forgot about it. The vaccines that are being developed, most of them are based on, because they started this with SARS. They started it with MERS, so 2 other COVID or coronaviruses of the same family. That's why we're ahead in terms of a vaccine, is we had a bit of a head start. Now, where would we be if they had continued that research? The other thing I think we need to look at is not just, doing all of that, but also really from, the sociology perspective, the epidemiology perspective. What have countries done well? What are different regions done well? What has worked? What hasn't worked? So if this does happen, we have a playbook, not a, okay, we're making this up on the fly. So less of this constant changing, but we get a playbook. So you know what, that's one thing, because it's, as much as I'd love to say, okay, we're not going to see a different virus come, there's no guarantee of that. So it is possible. And I know there is a lot of talk of that second wave, and therefore we could eventually end up back in shutdown, which I'm really hoping doesn't happen. I'm not going to lie. Yeah. But yeah, I do think it is a possibility. So you know what? Like I said, after all this, everyone still keep washing your hands.
Sanitize touch points.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And like I said, hopefully we actually do, once things have slowed down, we have the time to do that really in-depth research as to what happened, what went right, what didn't. So in other words, looking at different regions, who's handled it well, who hasn't, and comparing, contrasting, and finding what worked and what doesn't, so that we have a playbook going forward. And make sure we have it kind of written up somewhere that, hey, this thing hits, this is when we need to shut things down. This is how we do it, so that we can effectively shut it down, protect people, but then also try to minimize the effect on the economy.
I think for the most part, some of the questions that you've answered will answer some of the questions that I've heard that I've tried to give an answer to, but they won't believe me because I'm a theologian. Right?
Fair enough.
But how can you possibly think?
Yeah.
You know what? Thinking is not something that is just related to sciences. Mm-hmm. It's why I've said for many years, in terms of education and science education, especially, I've been like, you know what? The most important thing you can teach people is critical thinking.
Yes.
It is, because it doesn't matter if you go into the sciences, you go into the arts, you go into theology, you go anything. Critical thinking is more important than being able to memorize a textbook. Being able to tell me, how does germ theory work, for example? Because if you have critical thinking, you can learn that stuff. But if you don't know how to critically analyze and critically think your way through a problem, you're kind of dead in the water already. So critical thinking is something that does not apply just to science. It does apply to multiple fields, and is something, probably the most essential thing I think people need to learn.
Absolutely, because if people had critical thinking, they'd be able to look at these pandemic things or these conspiracy theories or whatever, or even do a quick Google search on the people that are in it and starring in it, and be able to get a little bit of a background to wonder what their agenda is.
Yeah, because I've seen bits of pandemic, and I can right away tell you, yeah, this is crap, because just what they're saying is making no sense. And then I know who that person is. This is why they're saying this. And that's the thing, that critical thinking, just being able to assess information, can really shoot down most conspiracy theories.
They start off with a classic psychological thing. Let's build somebody up to the point of her being, a target of some of these higher officials, and we've got a case, right? So they start off from a psychological viewpoint, not even a scientific viewpoint. And I'm like, this is a load of hooey, right from, like, it got me, going right at the beginning. But to tell you the truth, I mean, I can see how some people are just watching this and going, oh my gosh, like, they're out to get us.
And they're not.
That would mean the whole world.
And let's look at it this way. Do you really think this pandemic is helping any government right now? Okay, maybe.
We'll find out in November.
Oh, yeah. Maybe Johnson & Johnson's behind this, or like I said, Netflix. But realistically, if you think the government is doing this shutdown because, it's helping their economy or something, oh no, trust me. They're like, we're antsy to get back because this is killing us. Like, this is not what we want to be doing. Like, anybody with half a brain, as soon as they're like, oh, it's a government conspiracy, it's like, what is the government gaining from this?
Now, smarts seem to run in the family, don't you think?
Well, yeah, and they rub off on friends.
Well, for sure.
For sure. Now, there's going to be 2 versions of this. One will be the short version, which you are viewing here on Facebook. And there's going to be the full extended version of this interview, because it is jam-packed full of content, and really important content. So that will be on our YouTube channel. So go over there for the extended version. We'll put the link down here in the comments.
It was great to talk with Vikki. I'm just blown away usually whenever she starts talking, and well, kind of my eyes glaze over because she usually is way up here. But today she was just able to really speak to my intelligence level. But one thing I didn't mention it to her, but I was thinking of it later. Something I've started doing, I started it mid-April. I have a calendar in my home office, and whenever I leave the house, I write down where I've been. Went to the post office, went to Walmart to get groceries, whatever on those particular days. Because first of all, if I happen to contract the disease, then I can say this is where I've been. And no, I don't write down times, but the trace contract or contact tracers, is that what they're called?
Yeah.
The contact tracers will figure that out. But the flip side of that is if somebody else has had it and a notice goes out, if you were at such and such a store on such and such a day, contact us. I can go and look at my calendar. Oh, I was there the day before. I'm good. So I would recommend that we do that, just until this thing is contained.
Yeah. And now I know it's controversial, but I am going to say it here. The government of Alberta has a Track Together app that you can download onto your phone. And basically it does that for you. Every day I get notifications telling me if there was somebody in some place, or just what I can do to keep safe. I've been very fortunate up here in Slave Lake. There have only been 5 cases in Slave Lake, and they're all recovered, and I've been staying at home for this. So I've never gotten a notification saying, hey, there's a case here and you've been there, and they track your GPS somehow. But there are people, and there's all kinds of feelings about it, and it's okay to have all those different feelings. We're entitled to have those feelings, and you can download the app. It's your choice or not, but I have, and I have to say that the notifications that I get are extremely helpful. Reminders, even just to wash your hands, don't forget, wash your hands if you've been out or something like that, just to just to give you these friendly little reminders. And for me, it's comforting.
Yeah. And there are those who don't feel comfortable sharing where I've been, because who's using that information? I get that. Yeah. So, the old-fashioned technology of pen, paper, calendar, and pen, it works great too.
And that's a really important component. People all over the world have been saying, to be able to test, diagnose, and then trace that person in order to get that wake will stop it from taking off again. And we need, especially you guys there in New York. I know you're nowhere near the epicenter of this, but
we still have a high incidence rate compared to our population. Like the numbers compared to New Brunswick, I look and it's like, oh.
Yeah. So from Slave Lake, Alberta, and Slave Lake Wesleyan Church, yay! I am Pastor Peggy Yetman.
And from Norfolk, New York, and Norfolk Wesleyan Church, I'm Pastor Diane. We will see you next week for Tasty Tuesday. Yay!
And don't forget, send in your recipes. We want to feature you and your recipe on our show, so you get the opportunity and you can win a prize. Hey, who doesn't want a prize around this time, right?
Exactly. Until then, be safe,
be healthy, and be the church.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.